Hey, and a very warm welcome to the Into the LightWeb podcast with me, your hostess, Joanna Hunter, metaphysical teacher, spiritual life and business coach, published author, and the high priestess of the LightWeb, a spiritual technology that will change your life. This is the place to be to talk everything under the LightWeb, from consciousness, relationships, to money, to spiritual business, and everything in between. Hi, it's Joanna Hunter here with another episode of Into the LightWeb podcast. And today in my hot seat for the $1 Million Lab series, I have the gorgeous Leesa McGregor, who is a change maker. And I'm so excited for this interview because Leesa has made some incredible positive changes, not only in her own life, but in the lives of thousands of children. So this is going to be really, really fun. So Leesa, can you please introduce yourself a little bit and tell people what it is that you do?
Oh, thank you so much, Joanna. It's such a good question, right? How do we define ourselves? I think at this point in my life, I define myself as a change maker, and I've always been really passionate about the idea of making meaningful change in the world, and doing something to positively impact future generations. I remember one of my mentors years ago came up with this idea of aspiring to be a good ancestor, and realizing that we don't even really understand the scope of the impact that we're making, but rest assured, that our impact can extend into future generations. If you look at the idea of 7 generations, right? And I got so inspired by that. I thought, moving from the short-term thinking to the long-term vision of your work, your life's work and your purpose. And that's really informed my life. The last 10 years really it's been about this like soul search for creating meaningful change and doing something that's going to impact the future.
I love that. And obviously you've been an entrepreneur for many, many years, so it hasn't probably always been like that. There's been lots of how did it take us right back to where it all kind of started for you in the entrepreneurial journey? And what was the kind of hopes and dreams there? Because one of the things that we're really discuss a lot on the $1 Million Lab series is about this evolution and growth, that we all go through this evolution and growth, and that it's so important because I think so many people look for the quick fix, the fast thing. But if something's really, really worth doing, like becoming a good ancestor, right? It's about the evolution and growth and how much you can grow over a lifetime as opposed to a tiny little window of time.
Oh, it's so true. And I that's my greatest piece of wisdom to anyone starting out, anyone on the entrepreneurial journey, that it's not a sprint and it's not a destination. It is, you got to enjoy the journey. It's a marathon. It takes time. It takes years to cultivate your skills, your vision. And, it hasn't been easy for me at all. I'm happy to share my story. I mean, it's been filled, my husband and I always laugh. We've been together 11 years and it's been nothing short of a roller coaster ride in our professional lives, as we support each other. I think about being an entrepreneur, and I think I was a born entrepreneur. Like, I had 6 businesses before I was 12. I was, lemonade stand and Girl Guide cookies and selling candy. And like, I was always coming up with an idea of making something and selling something. And if I think back, what actually brings tears to my eyes is the link between what I'm doing now and what I did when I was a child. So I even used to write stories. And I would go door to door selling my stories. I'd say, do you want to buy my story for 50 cents? And I'm going to save a little bit of the money for college. Like, I couldn't believe at that age, I was like 9 or 10, and I was writing these stories and going door to door. So I realized I probably was a born entrepreneur. And, as I got into my 20s, I was very ambitious. I thought, I wanted to be a businesswoman. There was something about like this idea of being a businesswoman. And this was before the days of social media. I don't want to date myself. I mean, I'm in my 40s, but this was like before the days of the internet and social media. And I just had this idea. I wanted to be a businesswoman. I wanted to be an executive or something, And so my intention after graduating and doing my university, I wanted to do something that was revolutionary, that would be world changing. And so I started writing that down. And lo and behold, shortly after finishing university, I got involved with a technology startup. And that was my big break. I ended up building the company from 0 to 7 figures in 2 years. I traveled all around the world. I got invited to have tea with the Queen at Buckingham Palace. I did like so many amazing things. My career at
Incredible.
that point was beyond my wildest dreams. I'd achieved success, and I thought, wow, like this is so fascinating. And it was great. That was an incredible journey. That was 5 years. But then as I started to get later into my 20s, I started to get this nagging feeling. And I was like, I wanted to do something different. I transitioned out of the technology startup and I started doing some consulting work, and I started getting this nagging feeling inside. I was like, is this all there is? Right? Like I'd achieved what I thought I wanted. I had achieved that career success. And at that point, I was like even uncomfortable with the idea that I was making more money than both of my parents put together. Right? That was like even
Right.
that
Okay.
concept. And
So you were really starting to, like, it sounds to me like your journey was starting to morph into what I identify as the spiritual awakening, that
exactly,
there has got to be something more. This
there's got to be.
cannot be it. That nagging feeling, it won't go away. It doesn't matter. Like you can buy 100 Prada purses to try and put in that void, and it's just not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
The feeling like you get a fleeting like, woohoo, look at my new handbag, and then it's like, but there's got to be something more, and it doesn't matter what, because it's a spiritual search. So
It's
yeah, and then impacting and then realizing as well that you're earning more than your parents. And that, I think, we're hardwired. I talk about the 5 tribal fears, or the 5 fears, the primal fears, one of them being the tribal fear. And our elders, which are parents within that tribal fear, is that we're hardwired to please them. So when we start earning more than them, we start to get on very tricky terrain, mentally, emotionally, in our minds, because we start to freak out, like, what if my parents don't approve of this money that I'm making?
absolutely. And it's so unsettling. And
Mm,
it got really deep for me because exactly as you describe, I started to have the awakening. It was like a spiritual crisis, actually.
mm,
Here I was in my ivory tower in my big corporate job, making all this money. And in the evenings, I was on my yoga mat in the yoga studio crying, going, what is this about? Like, is this all there is? And that was the turning point for me. Actually, I was spending time with this yoga community. I was actually living in Australia at the time. And this yoga community taught me one of the most important lessons of my life, which was that your happiness and your fulfillment, that comes from inside, that
mm.
comes from being of service to humanity, to contributing to each other, to contributing to one another. And the people in this yoga community, I could see so clearly, like they didn't have the material. They weren't interested in that. They were interested in serving their fellow humans, right? We'd have this gorgeous organic meal served to us at the end of the yoga class. And, for them, it was about nurturing the community. And it was such an awakening for me. And I remember at that time that, I started to write in my journal. I started living in the question, how can I make a meaningful contribution to humanity? How can I make a meaningful contribution to the health and the well-being of people and the planet? And I started to get really clear that I was passionate about, sustainability and social and environmental change. And I started to live in that question. And that literally sent me on a soul searching journey for a decade, after that. And so it
I
wasn't an
love
easy
this.
time. Yeah, it wasn't an easy time because I still deeply I still deeply desired to be an entrepreneur. And I'd started a few businesses, and some of them fizzled out. It was like there wasn't the long term, like I couldn't see the big picture, like the long term vision. It
Mm,
was like making money, but not making an impact. And I got to the point where I ended up starting a business, where again, like this was like 5 years after that, where I hit a wall again. I thought, I was running a marketing company and I was making a lot of money from my clients. And one of the things that was nagging at me was that I wanted to work for impact companies. I wanted to work for businesses that really wanted to make a difference in the world. They didn't just want to make money. And so I was making money for the businesses that just wanted to make money, but I wanted to make money for the businesses that were making impact.
Okay.
And so, I made a bold decision to shut down my company. And I lost a tremendous amount of money, like 6 figures. And again, that sent me on the roller coaster journey of, what now? I've been stripped of that identity. I've been stripped of my success. I've been stripped of my achievement. This business didn't work because it wasn't soul aligned for me. And
Can I just stop you there for a second? I
yeah,
love that you said I've been stripped of my identity, because that's something that I really identify with. So when I had my clothing shops,
yeah,
before, and that was the one of the businesses that I had built from this energy of hustle.
yeah,
And but I had so much of my identity wrapped up in it. And there's this weird transition period as you dismantle that hustle business, but you're also dismantling a huge part of yourself, and having your identity wrapped up into it, you suddenly are in this free fall of like, who the hell am I? What
completely.
is, because like the funny thing was my shops were called Branded, and people actually used to call me, in the town that I live in, people used to actually call me Joanna from Branded. Like they were like, it was like together. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't like
Yeah.
I was like a separate entity to my business. It was like me and my business together. And so of course, when I let go of that business, I let go of that identity, it's like really like it puts you into a bit of an identity crisis of like, oh my goodness, what is, and then it's about redefining what's next, redefining the next step. And and then also as well to take that in a way where logically, on paper, you shut down a successful business, it made no sense. I did the same with my shops. Like it made no sense whatsoever. If like people were like, are you insane? This is
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
amazing business, And
Yes.
I was like, yeah, but I couldn't really at that stage. Now I can articulate it fine, but at that stage I couldn't articulate the feeling inside of the needing to rid myself of that, so that, because it was like, when you see those poor little trees that have been grown in a plastic tube, and that plastic tube needs to break so they
Yes.
can be the tree that they were always meant to be, like that.
Yes.
It was like I had to break the box. I had to break the thing that was holding me down, and move forward. And I love that you've gone on this very similar journey, because I think so, that was excruciatingly painful
Yes.
in making that shift and transition, because I went through this thing, and I don't know if you went through a similar, but I went through this thing where I felt like I was a princess, and not in a good way. Like not in a like, hey, I'm a princess and I'm manifesting everything that I want. Not in that way. Like Princess Joanna has just spat the dummy out, and now she wants to change everything. Like it was
Yes.
like
Yes.
self-indulgent,
Yes.
and I felt really judged, that people were judging me, that that I was frivolous in some way, shape, or form. And I don't
Yeah.
even know if they were really judging me. I think I was really judging myself as that.
Yes. Yeah.
And that, but I knew that there was this big driver, and I was terrified of making all the steps that I did. But I'm so glad that I did make them, because it was necessary to let that part of my life die, in a way, to sound very dramatical, but to let that die, to let the next part emerge. And what's emerged since has been spectacular. And I know it's the same in your story. What's emerged since is what's grown from the ashes of that. I mean, it's literally like setting your own thing alight, and then phoenixing yourself out of those ashes. So tell us a little bit about that phoenix moment for you, of
Oh,
shifting completely.
it literally is exactly that. It's the phoenix rising from the ashes. And it's, to me, it feels like sometimes we just have to go through that dark night of the soul to get to the other side. And what happens, the beauty of it, the gift in all of it, is that you allow yourself to again reemerge as a new person, new
Mm-hmm.
identity, a new canvas that you're painting on. And I would never trade any of that. I would never trade any of it. It's like, that's all part of the journey. And I remember Oprah saying this years ago, you know, that we just don't trust the journey enough. We don't trust the big picture and the unfolding, and really, like, what's in our heart, what is that deep desire. And I have proven to myself in this lived experience, even at this time now, I wish I would have trusted that deep desire, that heart's desire. I wanted to make a meaningful difference. I wanted to make change in the world, and now it's happening. And I didn't trust it enough back then. And it's just, we just have to trust that even the hardest times we'll get through that. It's inevitable, right? It's inevitable that we can get through that. It's just, you know, what meaning are we assigning to that? And how do we just keep holding to the higher vision of what we really want and what our heart's desire is.
I love that. And let's recap on that, because I think, you know, what meaning are we assigning to it? Because quite often we are very, very good as human beings assigning a negative meaning to it.
Yes.
You know, and not actually realizing that, you know, many times people tell the story that they have failed and then they've started another business. And yet they are starting that business with this really, really heavy story inside that I've failed. Yes. And it's like, no, what if that was not a failure? What if that was just a stepping stone? You were never meant to see that business to completion. So it's total rubbish that that's a failure in that, because basically that when that business started to dissolve, it took you as far as it was going to take you.
Yes,
it gave
exactly.
you all the lessons that business was going to contain, and that actually it's the next bit. But we assign that, oh my God, I'm a big fat failure. It's terrible. It's awful, you know. And now I'm a really rubbish businesswoman. But actually, what if you just extracted everything that you were meant to do, and then that can be brought in, and you build your next business on what you learned.
Absolutely.
You know?
I so wholeheartedly believe that's the journey. And, you know, sometimes we'll take a fork in the road that informs us that that's not the right fork in the road. And then we move to the next direction. Exactly. And my husband and I actually were just laughing about that yesterday. We were sitting out on the deck and he said, isn't it funny? You know, you think about all the strife, you started a few businesses and it just didn't have the longevity for you. And he goes, that was all part of the divine plan, Leesa. Look where you are now, you know, and it just was such a reminder to me, and just to be grateful, you know, be grateful all the way through, because it shapes us as humans and it shapes who we are as people. And if we're committed to growth and evolution over a lifetime, we shouldn't be scared of it. You know, we shouldn't be scared of these things.
I love that. Yes, that's right? Exactly. Once I started viewing my life as evolution and growth over a lifetime, it was like exponentially expansions in the energy, in everything, because everything had new meaning. Yes. Everything had new meaning, because it was like where I had seen once mistakes, it was evolution and growth I saw now. Where I once saw places where I was like, oh, I'm such a failure. No, there was no failure anymore. Failure disappeared. It became something that became obsolete. And instead it was just ways that didn't work and evolution and growth. And I learned something valuable from every single incident that I had once upon a time called a failure. Yes. And so I love that. So we've got this big driving force inside you, Leesa, like a little big ball of energy, wanting to make this impact, wanting to make your ancestors proud, or to become a woman that your ancestors look at and say, wow, that was a woman, right? And so how does that morph into your current business? Tell us about, because I adore what it is that you have created.
Oh, thank you. Well, I have to say, one thing I'll share with our community of listeners is that trust intention and trust desire and manifestation, and trust your journal entries, trust what you're writing down in your journal. So it's really such a beautiful story, what's unfolded the last few years. So when my son came along, he's 5 now. And when my son came along, I remember that I got this idea. I wanted to be a good ancestor. I wanted to make a difference in his generation. And I started to write that in my journal. How can I positively impact my son's generation? How can I make a difference in education? Because I'd always thought about systems change. I thought about how I could see that these systems that we've built in the world, arguably we can all say are not working now, right? Like the political, the healthcare, the education, like everything needs to be
Education
changed.
system. I mean,
Yes,
it's not changed in 120 years. I mean, it needs
exactly.
radical reform.
Exactly. It was built on industrial age values, and we're moving out of that
Yeah,
era.
of
And
course.
so I started writing that in my journal. I was like, how can I make a difference? How can I make a difference in education? And the funny part about it is I don't have a degree in education. I did know that at some level I was a spiritual teacher. I knew I was meant to teach. I'd run workshops, and I've done different things where I've taught over the years. And so I wrote this in my journal. And one day I had the most incredible eureka moment of my life. I was at the beach with my son, and he was 3. And we were playing, and I just love, you go to the beach, you're in nature, you're connecting, and I feel like that's where my intuition is strongest, where my divine downloads come from, right? And of course, being a
Absolutely.
creative person, you're always craving it, like what's next? And my son looked at me, and it was like his soul was speaking to me, and he said, "Mom, what else have you got for me?" And I realized in that moment that as a mom, as an ambitious mom, I had taught him everything I thought I was supposed to teach him: letters, numbers, colors. And I thought to myself, why is it that I haven't taught my son about compassion? Why haven't I taught him about empathy? What about diversity? What about gratitude? And in that moment, I got this list. I got this idea to write a list of alphabet words that I could teach my son that would really allow him to connect to his heart. Because I started even thinking, gosh, as a woman in my 40s, how is it that it took me this long to figure out how to have a heart connection and live a mindful life? And, why is it that we're not teaching our kids from the very beginning? And imagine how different the world would be if our children learned from the very beginning what compassion meant, what empathy meant, what diversity really meant, what it means. And so I got this idea to write this list of alphabet words. And I shared it with Max, my son, and he got all excited. He started reciting the words, and he was all, it was, instead of A is for apple, B is for ball, C is for cat, it's A is for abundance, B is for bravery, C is for compassion, D
Oh,
is for
love it.
diversity, E
Oh
is
my
for empathy. And so I came home and I shared the list with my husband, and he literally fell off his chair. He goes, "Leesa, you've just rewritten the alphabet." He goes, this is unbelievable. And so then I shared it with a few mom friends, and they were like, "Leesa, this is genius. You need to do something with this. This is a new alphabet." And so I had written a previous children's book before this when I traveled around the world with my son when he was a baby, and I wrote a book about that. And I was so inspired by writing children's books. It's kind of like this newfound passion. And so my husband said, "You need to write a book about this alphabet." And so we launched a Kickstarter campaign, and it was incredible. On my 42nd birthday, the campaign was funded. Like literally in 48 hours, the campaign was done. And my husband calls me up and he goes,
God.
"Leesa," he goes, "Did you see that your campaign's been funded?" And I said, "What do you mean?" Like, it was a big stretch, I can't remember what we were asking for. It was like $5,000 or something. And he goes, it's funded. And it turned out that there was someone in the community that even put $3,000 as a pledge towards the project. And I just started crying. I thought, wow, like the world wants this. And as an entrepreneur, I thought I need to do this because I want to test the idea. So long story short, it was such a profound experience of my life. I got into the incubator of building this book, and then I had to find, the most sustainable book printer that I could find that used recycled paper and non-toxic inks and all that. And so I went down this journey of publishing this book, and it was amazing. And we sent it out to our initial funders, and they were so excited, and they were saying, "My kid loves this book. This is their favorite book." And so the start of 2020, we started stocking it in retailers around Australia and Canada. And I was getting, it was bizarre because they were calling me back every week saying, "Leesa, we're out of books again. We're out of books. We're out of books. We need more books." And I was like, this is bizarre. And they're even saying to me, "I don't understand. This book doesn't sit on the shelf. It just keeps leaving. People come in, they see the book, they buy it." And then they come back and someone else says, oh, I got to buy this book. And then I started getting family and friends. Like I'd get grandma showing up at the back door and they're like, I heard about your book. Can I have 10 more? And I just can't even tell you, like, it just, like, it's like such a dream come true for me because I knew it was striking a chord. It was a heart connection. There was something about this book that was speaking to the heart, and it was bringing us back to our humanity. And I realized the profoundness of the fact that I was just simply a messenger for this book. I was a messenger for the message of our times, which is that we need to get back to the heart of what it means to be human.
Yes.
And that is the essence of it. And that is the essence of it. And so last year was the wildest ride of my life. We went from 0 to 7 figures, like in 5 months, actually. Like we started slow and we were, working on these things, and then bam, it just went. And it's been incredible. It's been an incredible ride, scaling my company and trying to keep up as fast as I can with the growth of it. But it's to me, it has nothing like the size and the scope of the business and the numbers to me are just the resources to continue growing the impact. It's that's all it means to me. It's funny, even last year, we had these huge sales days and my husband's going, look at this. And I'm just going, well, the grandmother that just wrote into me and told me that this book changed her family's life and that her 2-year-old now knows what compassion is, that means more to me than the numbers. That means more to me than the numbers. And I realized that I had shifted into a different drive, a different desire. And I'm all about,
we call it the service mindset.
It's the service. Yeah. It's
one of the things is we talk about it in the $1 Million book, in the $1 Million Experiment book. We talk about an energy that my spirit team call the Great Exchange, which is whatever you're willing, like what is in your heart's desire, what you truly, truly desire in life, whatever it is that you truly desire, that if you give to the world on the same vibration of what your desire is. So your desire was to make impact. And if we feel, what would it feel like to give that impact? And we could say, well, it would feel amazing. It would feel expansive. It would feel great. If you think about the book, you could use those same words to describe that book. It's expansive, it's changing, it's all the things, right? And that's what the Great Exchange is. We give the energy that we desire to receive back. And then we've really created the kind of big figure of 8, as we give, so shall we receive. And that's where the exponential growth exists in the metaphysics. And it's one of the kind of principles that we have within the $1 Million Experiment. It's not about it's by creating conscious millionaires. It's about creating people who are here for change, because like you said, the money is not the be end and all. The money is the resource for the change.
The money is the resource for the change. That is absolutely it. That is so beautifully said, Joanna. That is it. And it's exciting because, you look at the ambition. I mean, I've always, thought about, okay, if the 1% is running the world, what about if we just become the new 1%, the new stewards of wealth and the new stewards of impact? And there was a profound book I read a couple of years ago that also informed this sense of purpose for me. It was called The Clean Money Revolution. And the whole idea behind the book is that the greatest wealth transfer in history is really happening right now. Part of it is that the baby boomers, the money is transitioning from the baby boomers to the millennials. And one of the things that this book proposes is, how do we take that money that was arguably dirty? It was made on the backs of the environment. It was made on the backs of, the exploitation and extraction of people and the planet, which is a lot of how money is made.
And a
right?
lot of the really big generational wealth that we're seeing, like, has come from slavery, and lots of really gnarly energy in that money, right? Lots of really, really gnarly energy.
Yeah. And Earth's resources, right? We've just had this free ticket to ride off the backs of the planet. Like, just take and make a buck out of it. Right. And so I feel like this time, it's so exciting to step into that idea idea of how do we take that money and make it clean and rebuild the earth, regenerate the earth, and build regenerative businesses that are all about doing exactly this, the cyclical. You make the money, and you have the ability to then continue growing the impact and the good, and restoring equality, restoring biodiversity. Even for myself in my business, for every book that we sell, we plant a tree. And that's been a driver for me. I'm so excited about the
I love that.
reforestation. I think about selling millions of books. I want to plant millions of trees. And so I feel like it's such an exciting time to be alive for those very reasons, that we've got an opportunity to remake the world. And we have an opportunity to really step into the vision for the new earth and create a new story for humanity.
I love that. It's a big part of, I have another book called Get Selfish, The Way Is Through. And the ethos of Get Selfish is really filling up your own vessel to being fulfilled. Because one of the things that I recognized very early on in my life is that I thought, even as a child, I remember having these thoughts of like, no wonder people don't care so much about each other, because they don't really care about themselves. Right?
Yeah.
So like, how are we supposed to extend that energy outward when the energy does not exist inside? And when I finally had my sort of huge big burnout and then began in the healing journey, I had to do the one thing that I had been in total resistance of, which was to get selfish. There was no more to give, and I had to do what it took to fulfill my vessel. And I did it kicking and screaming, because I was so terrified that I would turn into this awful, selfish monster. And instead, what happened was I filled up and became abundant
Oh,
inside. And then suddenly I had all this energy to give other people. And I could show up in a way that I had never been able to show up in the world before, because I wasn't running on empty. I wasn't running on energy like resentment. I think so many women work off the energy of resentment. They're tired. They've done
yes.
a hard day's work, but yet they're still going,
Yes.
and then the vibes of resentment. And I thought, these are lack vibes. And then if you build those, like A is, like, that's what I love. A is for abundance, right? When you build the abundant vibes within inside yourself and you feel abundant inside, it's easy to create abundance around you. It is easy to tap into that bigger resource. And I think it's so important that we start with the self as we grow that, because then we have the capacity to hold what you are proposing here, which is to create game-changing businesses. But it's so hard to create. You can create a game-changing business, but it's so hard to hold the space for that in a positive energy kind of exchange if you are in lack yourself.
Yes. So
It's
true.
so hard to hold the energy, and it's so much easier to hold the energy if we're in like a positive energy for ourselves, like we feel respected and loved. And it doesn't, we've been looking for that respect and that love from the outside world, which is why so many women overgive. But the truth is that, like, we've got to give to ourselves to fill up
Absolutely.
the vessel. Then we can be this, like, mouthpiece, if you like, of the
Yes.
divine. Like, we can be this ambassador. I see myself
I
quite
love that.
often as like an ambassador for divine energy. Is
Oh,
that, like, what has come in. I always think that what comes through you is, it's for you as well. Like, it's first for you. And the first time I heard that was one of the other ladies that we had on the podcast called Melanie. Melanie on Layers said, like, if it comes through you, it's most likely it's for you. And I was like, yes, you
so
know,
true.
and
So true. It's that, and just trusting that channel and how it comes through. It's for you.
exactly. And then as it's for you, you begin to embody it. But you can't embody it if your own energy is on empty. So you
Yes.
got to have a fulfilled energy. That's like the first key piece. And then you can embody and hold the capacity. Because I mean, like, imagine all the success that you've had, but your energy wasn't in the place that it is now, that we can evidently see, in your energy. And instead, you were in a place where you felt over delivering, over giving, over everything, right? Like, this success would not have been fun. This would have been torture. But
Oh,
this,
absolutely.
it's like you've ridden this wave of your success, and it's just been fun and high vibes. And then when that grandma writes and like, oh my God, you've changed our lives, and my granddaughter knows about compassion, it's like, oh my God. And it's just the vibes just keep building and building and building, going higher and higher and higher. And I love that with your story. So what is your plans going forward, apart from obviously world domination?
Well, it's so fascinating, Joanna, because I feel like I've opened up a can of worms, literally. If you think about our education system
Hmm.
and you think about what our kids are learning, and I have all the respect in the world for teachers. Some of my best friends are teachers. And we are ripe for change right now. We are ripe for change. We are needing a new system for these children that are coming in. They want more. They do not want A is for apple, B is for ball. They want something more. And I feel so
I feel
excited
that
about,
deeply. We are not meeting their needs. They
yes,
are so sensitive to energy, and
yes,
there is nothing teaching them about energy because the consciousness has risen so much, and they
yes.
are so open, and then they get into these school systems, and it's almost like their energy is slammed shut.
It's exactly right. And the teachers are craving, they want to be part of this change. And what the greatest honor and compliment for me is that schools are now buying my book. They are contacting me. They're saying, we heard about your book. They're buying, hundreds at a time. And I'm going, this is the greatest compliment to me, that the schools are now saying, this is a teaching resource. This is what we need in our schools. And so for
I
me,
love
I'm
that.
excited about building the education pieces, and like writing more books. I've actually sketched out 30 more books. Like the series is there. I honestly don't have enough time in the day. Like I shouldn't say that because I do. However, the creative flow that's coming through about really just creating more tools and materials and things that help to instill that heart connection, that social and emotional learning, which in my mind is the most important and essential. The academic side is secondary to the human side. And so, yeah, so I'm in the business, I'm busy creating all of these new projects. I actually
I
just
love
finished
it.
my next book. It's called I Can Change the World. And it's going to be a book to inspire young children to know that they can make a difference, to know that they're a thoughtful group of ordinary, committed citizens. We're the only people that ever changed the world. And if we can allow our children to feel empowered, that they can make a difference from an early age and they can be contributors to their community and to each other, I feel like that's a big piece as well. So I'm just on this mission to really raise the next generation to be heart-centered and do go as far as I
Mm.
can. I mean, if I could wave my magic wand, I would hire 100 educators right now and give them jobs and opportunities to build out this curriculum and continue this movement, because it clearly is a movement we've started. So I'm just I can't speak enough about it. It's very exciting.
You've got my business coach mind going 100 to the dozen.
I have to talk to you about that.
Don't you worry. We're gonna download a plan for you. I love this because I think it's such important work. And one of the questions that we recently actually had inside the $1 million community was, how can I support my kids? How can I support my kids in
Mhm.
this? Because obviously in the $1 million community, we're talking about money. One of the reasons where I really felt drawn to doing the experiment about the money, or apart from receiving the download about it, was that money for me, especially in the first part where I built very successful businesses, but I had to keep doing, I had to keep going, otherwise it wouldn't be successful. So they had a massive emotional toll on me, and mental and physical toll on me. And the stress was governed by money, right? And it's one of the
Mhm.
things that causes the most divorce in, it's not, spouses falling out of love. Unfortunately, it's arguments over money, right?
Yes.
And I think, I've done my own fair share of hating money, disliking money, all the things. And at the end, of the day, it just comes back down to money just being an energy, and it's inert without me. What am I making it mean? And I realized I needed to heal my relationship with money. And as I healed my relationship with money, surprise, I became wealthy. you know, and but it took away so much stress. And I think
Yes.
one of the most amazing things that when money stress is off the table for a human being, they can truly be who they came here to be because they're not worried about how am I going to live.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
then we can ask questions. How can I impact? How am I going to thrive? How am I going to leave legacy? Because the bandwidth to answer those questions is there, because you're not living paycheck to paycheck, you're not living hand to mouth, you're not living in that cycle of stress that lack of money creates. And a big part of the experiment that we wanted to create was to help, heal the relationship that people are having with money, so that they start to move into a thriving energy with money. And then then they can become these channels of what's to come next. And I know that many of the people that I already attract into my communities, they're already called to help humanity. So having the resource of money in these people's hands is something that gets me so excited,
Yes. Yes.
because they can do incredible things with it, right? They can create incredible change and incredible shifts, and there's so many amazing great ideas. And I mean, like, look at your idea that came through you. That's just one idea that is going to touch thousands and thousands and thousands of lives. What else is out there? What else is possible? It gets me so excited to think what is going to be the ripple of this.
That's it. What is going to be the ripple, and how, that excites me beyond anything. And we may not know the full scope of our work over this lifetime,
We'll
but
never know.
rest assured, we will make that difference. And I just love what you said. And I would say, a piece of advice that I realized, I wrote this down in my journal as well a few years ago. I said that because I was so passionate about this idea of creating social and environmental change, I wrote in my journal that I did not want to have to think about my expenses anymore. I didn't want to have to think about paying bills and living. I wanted that to be taken care of so that I could do the great work in the world. And it's interesting, my husband runs a successful coaching business. He used to work with Tony Robbins, actually. He was
Okay.
Tony Robbins' top business coach for years. And we realized how much that had shifted for us, because we went, well, yeah, you can have all the material stuff, and that's not where the fulfillment will ever come from. But how do you make it so that that's just taken care of? Your living expenses, your food, clothing, and shelter is taken care of, and then so much of your energy is then dedicated and to creating the change, making that contribution. And it frees up a tremendous amount of energy for us, when we're not having to think about those things. So I totally celebrate you for supporting women to get to that level where, we can really think about being the change, and just not worrying about the bills.
Exactly. We're worrying about the day to day. What's it going to take for me to live? How am I going to get past this month?
Yeah.
Takes so much of our bandwidth. We're
Yes.
not able to tap into the greatness of our souls. We're not able
Yes.
to touch that divine connection to the same extent of when we're completely relaxed. Everything feels like it's taken care of. Then we can be, I mean, look at what happened. You were out in nature, you were probably feeling all the vibes of the day that day, like the sun was beating, you were just like, this is the life, and like, boom, in it came. It's
Yeah.
effortless when
Yes.
when we're in that contact, it's effortless. But if the mind is cluttered with all the day-to-day stuff, and I realized, for my own self, it was to unclutter my mind first and foremost. That was part of my get selfish process, was to
Beautiful. Yeah.
unclutter my mind first and foremost. To heal my relationship with money came next. And as soon as those things were, I just been this like amazing channel for change. And it's beautiful to hear how it's worked in your journey, and how it's unfolded. So tell people a little bit about the name of your book as well, because I am sure there's so many mamas that are going to be listening to this going, how do I get, because I want to get a copy of this book. So I'm like, how do I get a copy of this book?
Oh, thank you. So my website the book is called A New Alphabet for Humanity. And the website is alphabetforhumanity.com. And one of the other things I did, I put together a children's empowerment kit. So people can go to my website, they can download it. And I'm pretty proud of it, actually. I always laugh and say that the book was actually the easy part to write, but I took it upon myself to build an entire curriculum, a curriculum based on love. And so I've got lesson plans for both teachers and parents, and I give them away every week for free. So every week you'll get a letter, an email that says, A is for abundance. And then it gives you ideas on how you can teach your child to embody the words. So I'm very proud of it. So yeah, so I have a children's empowerment kit on my website. There's printable posters on there. And we do printables as well. So we try and support, parents and just give them ideas and activities that they can use with their child. And soon I'll be launching a course as well, because I realize that's the next step. Because what happens is when you get the book, you get excited about the conversations that happen with your child. And I realize, wow, we could go so far with this. This really is course material. It's like, how do we continue stimulating that conversation and that teaching around all of these heart concepts? So so I'm very excited. So for all your listeners, just head over to alphabetforhumanity.com. You can access the empowerment kit. We ship internationally. So
fantastic. We'll make sure we link all this in the show notes as well. So if you are listening to this on iTunes, Spotify, or iHeartRadio, or one of the other places where the podcast is syndicated, we'll make sure if you click on the show notes, you will get all the links to everything that Leesa has said here, because I think this work is so important. And yes, a whole little wave of conscious mini-me's, that has got to be good for the world, right?
Yes. Change makers. They're all, as soon as they inherit the earth, it's going to be completely different. We just know, we can already see it,
I love it. I love it. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I have really, really enjoyed this conversation. I cannot wait to get my hands on a copy of your book. And I know my youngest daughter, Katie, who's 11, I know that we're going to have some probably amazing conversations from this book.
Oh, Joanna, thank you so much. It's been it's been a joy to connect with you. Thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you.